Please be seated. As Unitarian Universalists, we light the chalice flame as a symbol of our sacred time together. On this day, we also light the chalice as a reminder that before the match, there is the oil. Just as before there is the person, there are the basic building blocks of life. Ancient atoms of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, the cells, the proteins, the strings of DNA, just waiting for the spark of life. As oil meets flame through the body of the wick, the fire of life is passed on again to light the darkness for a moment in time, to warm the space around it, to shine. Today, we celebrate the life of one who shone, who sparkled with exuberance and glimmered with commitment. We celebrate the life of Anne-Marie Grassmann, mom, gamma, aunt, sister, advocate, leader, companion, and friend. Before she went back to school to become an occupational therapist, Anne-Marie made maps. How appropriate for someone who knew where she was going. But how might she have mapped her own life? Perhaps with a road map of the United States, with a pin in Fort Collins, Colorado, where she was born. Then tracking a path to Casper, Wyoming, where she was a big sister to Sandy and Tim and Tom. More lines drawn to more places that were also home, including Memphis and Oklahoma City and St. Louis. Next might come a physical or topographic map showing peaks and valleys, the joys and the challenges of marriage and relationships, single motherhood, political activism, and careers, the low places of illness, and the elevated places of friendship and kindness, and bucket list items achieved. She might have used a political map to track her travels around the world, across borders and overseas. Or maybe a thematic map, marking all the places where she acquired pieces of art for her collection. One very detailed map might indicate the places in this very building where she sat and sang and spoke out and did good work. This chancel, where she sang with the choir, the meeting rooms where she presided over the board of trustees as president and participated in Voice and the Peace House and other social justice programs and projects. The kitchen in Daniel Hall, where she helped with events, religious education classrooms, where she participated in covenant groups and advocated for human sexuality education. And beyond these walls, to protest at the Capitol, to Pride and MLK Day parades, and to Robbers Cave State Park. How do you map a life? With the places you've lived and traveled to, with the experiences you've had that brought you high, low, and somewhere in between. But more than anything, with the people you've met along the way, with the people whose lives you've changed, with the friends you've made, and the people who've experienced your care. And of course, we mustn't forget about the beloved animals, all the cats who found a loving home with Anne-Marie. Roll out Anne-Marie's map of love and care, and you will find it full of dots. Each dot a person whose life she touched. Each of those dots connected to other lives, creating a beautiful pattern, a map of joy, and a life well lived. Today, we'll hear remembrances from Anne-Marie's children, and there will be time at the end for anyone who would like to speak, to share a fond memory, to come up to the lectern to do so. But first, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our hymn, number 21, and the gray Howard-bound hymnal, For the Beauty of the Earth. We'll sing all 4 verses.
Good morning. I'm Alicia, Anne-Marie's youngest child. On behalf of our family, whether that's in person or online, we'd like to thank everyone for being here today. One thing we've heard over and over again about her since she was diagnosed with cancer was what a presence she had, and we hope to honor that presence today. My mother was born in Fort Collins, Colorado on December 11th, 1943. She was a war baby and always felt that distinguished her experiences from her baby boomer contemporaries. And she was always fast to point that out, using the example of her ration book that we still have today as one of the differences she experienced. Her early life was plagued with problems the boomer generation presented. Her schools were always under construction to prepare for the large classes behind her. Her classes were always smaller than her siblings, and she often felt as though her generation was forgotten by history. Anne Marie loved being an older sibling. She often had conflict with her sister Sandy, as two girls who shared a bedroom would, but their travel together later in life left them with good memories, traveling with each other to China, Mongolia, and India. She loved to tell stories of the summer she chased her younger brother, Tim, all over Casper, Wyoming. He would get up in the morning and take her 26-inch bicycle and go all over town. She was tasked with finding him, and it took her almost 3 weeks to realize he was having to sit in the crotch of that bicycle because he was too little to sit on the seat. She worked hard to fulfill forgotten promises to her youngest brother, Tom, like the clown doll she handmade and gave him in 2007. She worked hard on that doll, a promise made even before I was born, and brought him that doll when my own oldest child was 4. In 1963, my brother Jamie was born in Memphis, Tennessee. While some would call motherhood one of their greatest accomplishments, for her, it was not. In fact, we are under strict orders to never imply such. She always said she had children to have good adults, and she enjoyed each of us more the older we got. The same applied to her grandchildren. Though she was thrilled when the babies were born, she liked them better as they became capable of walking, talking, and eventually reason. She applied that same reason to her last marriage to my father, John Grassmann. While the marriage didn't survive, their mutual respect did. It allowed them to be more cordial and co-parent my fraught teen years together, while also supporting my brother and sister, who were well into their adult years by then. It wasn't until after I was born that my mother began to travel. First, she visited her sister in Germany in the 1980s, but as she aged, she knew she wanted to travel more. Some of the highlights include traveling with the First Unitarian Church Choir to Transylvania, the aforementioned travel with her sister Sandy, and some domestic travel like a cruise to Alaska and a Rhodes Scholar trip to the national parks in Utah she took with longtime church members Dorothy Driver and Margaret Roseboom. While some would call travel their greatest accomplishment, not my mother. Anne Marie was dedicated to service during her life, filling needs as she saw fit, both in this church and in other nonprofits she supported. She saw a need to take in young gay men ousted from their homes by parents who didn't understand them, and she did her best. She saw a need for a human sexuality program at this church and advocated for it. Though she had to have a locking cabinet since one of the sisters from Villa Teresa taught English in the same room, she was proud to have brought the program to First Unitarian, but she still didn't call it her greatest accomplishment. During the 2001 and 2002 church year, she served as president here. National events added an extra layer of work to her year, but she presented herself with her typical grace and led the church through. Among other causes she supported both fiscally and with her time, we can include the First Unitarian Church Choir and Social Justice Committee, the Peace House, Results, the AIDS Mastery Workshop, Pombe Ghana, various political candidate supports across the nation, the Oklahoma Democratic Party, Voice, World Wildlife Fund, Her Land Sister Resources, Sister BJ's Pantry, and AIDS Walk Oklahoma. While she delighted in having enough disposable income to share with these charities, she still wouldn't say that was her greatest accomplishment. In 2016, my mother and I moved to St. Louis. We became members of Elliott Chapel. She was pleased to sing with the choir before the pandemic, though the decline in her health left her unable to sing with them when they resumed their work. As many churches did, Elliott Chapel moved to Zoom services during the pandemic, and she was pleased to get to know many during the coffee hours held online. By now, I'm sure the question's occurred to you a few times. So what did she consider her greatest accomplishment? Graduating with her bachelor's degree in occupational therapy at the age of 50. She had been interested for many years, and when the oil business that she had been a cartographer at began to fail, she rode the layoffs and waiting just for the right offer. When it came, she took it and never looked back. OT school was not easy for her. She was significantly older than her classmates. She was out of practice at school. She'd lost her own mother during the schooling, and it was an accelerated course. But she persevered and got her diploma. After finishing her licensing exams, she became involved in state agencies like the Oklahoma Occupational Therapy Association and national organizations like the National Board for Certifying Occupational Therapists. Eventually, she even served on the Oklahoma Medical Licensure Board for occupational therapists. Her career spanned the breadth of OT work, from working in Western Oklahoma schools to home health and nursing home care, before she finally settled in at OU Medical Center. She even spent some time teaching in a COTA, or Certified Occupational Therapy Assistant program, at a VOTEC here. While my mother gave up her license when she moved to Missouri, she never let anyone in the medical field forget what she did. She would proudly tell her doctors and nurses throughout her care, "You can use medical terminology with me. I'm a retired OT." Our mother was not the kind of woman to be defined by her career, but having the bravery and tenacity to return to school and follow the dream she had developed was indicative of her character. That same tenacity was how she kept my siblings and I as bonded as we are, despite over a decade in age difference. That bravery is what led me to seek a different life in St. Louis and brought her with me. It was my honor to spend the last year of her life taking care of her, with the amazing support of Jamie and Jessica. And before I end my time with you, I just want to say that while her proudest title may not have been mother, she did an exceptional job of being one and showing us how to exist in her absence.
Hello, I'm Jamie. Anne-Marie was born in the World War II era, deep in the Midwest, into an economy of post-war scarcity. That scarcity shaped much of how she approached the world: thrift stores, saving fabric, collecting art supplies. She helped my grandmother take care of her sister Sandy, brothers Tim and Tom. The world expected certain things of a young woman, and she tried to meet those expectations on her terms. At the age of 20, she began her own family with Danny Harris. I was born in 1964, and Jessica in 66. She was a young mother when she lost her father to suicide after a cancer diagnosis. She divorced Danny Harris and fought to keep us in an era where it was frowned on to be a single mother. So there would be partners in her life who she turned to in an effort to make sure her children were provided for and who could give her the companionship she needed. A couple of those people would be the caring men in my life: Jerry Fightmaster, who would take us to Oklahoma; John Grassmann, our father, adopted Jessica and me into his family, gave us his name, and gave me a baby sister, Alicia. In all of this growing a family together, it seems to me that one of her guiding principles, her moral compass, was to never let someone feel alone, abandoned, or uncared for. She did this for her children even when it was difficult. She found a church, this church, for us to grow up in, that would give us a liberal shelter in a conservative world. A place where knowledge and education and freedom of thought would be celebrated and supported. I know she was grateful for the community here at First Unitarian, and she gave back to this community whenever she could. As a young man, I watched her recognize that the career that she had worked in for decades was changing, and she had the opportunity to guide her career to help others. She chose to become an occupational therapist. She went back to school to learn those skills and to find in them a way to help those around her. She did this while raising my sister, Alicia. She worked hard for this, and many of you know how dedicated she was to being mother and student, all the while being sure that no one was left out. And this brings me to my cousin Jeff. Jeff had a troubled youth, and many of us tried to care for him, and it seemed at one point that we had all failed him. He had struggled so hard with his addiction, his sense of self-worth, his fear that he had become unworthy of love. I think part of his mental illness was an inability to connect with his immediate family. who suffered deeply from this separation. His mother and father, Sandy and Mike, loved him and tried. His Uncle Tim and Aunt Debbie loved him and tried. My husband Jim and I loved him and tried. When he thought that all was lost, Anne-Marie took him in. Somehow, like a kind miracle, she was able to gain his trust. She provided him a home and even created a contract for him to uphold. He still struggled, but she made sure he was getting the professional help he needed in the safety of her home. My cousin passed a couple of years ago. He was in hospice in my mother's home. My sister Alicia helped my mother care for him. His illness was physical as well as psychological and had gone on so long that it would be how he left this world. When we knew he was passing, Mike and Sandy tried so hard to arrive in time. I was on my way too. Mom made sure that he knew he was home, that he was not alone, that he was worthy of love. She took up this work for our whole family. This is who she was. This is why we love her. I marvel at the person my mother is.
Good morning. I'm Jessica, the middle child, and I want to echo the thank you for all of us being here, whether in person or online. And I know many of you traveled great distances. Colorado, Oregon, our nephews Justin and James just arrived, as well as Amarillo. So thanks everyone for being here. You've heard a good deal about Mom from Jamie and Alicia, and I wanted to share some recent perspectives from the last several years. Though no one wants a cancer diagnosis, Mom took the diagnosis in stride, agreed to fight it, and as a testament to that, promptly dyed her hair purple. She had such spunk and humor that stayed with her until the end. Her purple hair color brought joy to all that saw her, and I don't think she had a single outing where someone didn't walk up and say, "I love your hair." They just, as you can see, her purple hair there. Of course, her matching purple items. She always had her purple purse, her purple eyeglasses, and assorted other purple pieces of things. As Alicia said, she had a presence, and this is illustrated in her purple picture that's right down here. When it became clear that the cancer was winning and that she had less than 2 years left, she again took it in stride and created a bucket list of everything she wanted to happen. And it was such a gift that the three of us could help her make those things happen. We don't always get the gift of the ability to know that and to have that opportunity. Mom's list included some big items like taking trips to visit each of her brothers, Tim and his wife Debbie in Portland, Oregon, her brother Tom and his wife Margaret in Casper, Wyoming, and her sister Sandy and her husband Mike, who at that point were in Breckenridge, Colorado. Another big item was getting her house ready to host Thanksgiving 2022. And for anyone that ever saw the house that she moved into, it was quite a fixer-upper, so that took several years. But she was super happy to have all her children and grandchildren around the table this past Thanksgiving. Other fun things on her list included taking a cruise with Alicia and Alicia's daughter Sorsha, also going to the St. Louis Zoo. There was something special about zoos that she loved the one here and she always liked going to them. Also riding the giant St. Louis Ferris wheel, going to the botanical gardens when everything was in bloom, which is where the picture is down below. And also driving through beautiful Tower Grove Park in St. Louis. She loved the beauty of St. Louis. Because Mom knew that she was near the end, she was also able to tell us how she wanted her memorial to go. You guys who know Anne-Marie know that she is super happy to give directions. And, if a professional moving company was moving her, she would tell them, the right way to do it. If I was driving, she would tell me the streets I needed to turn on to avoid the lights and stop signs. She didn't like to stop. And so she knew the best way, according to Anne-Marie, and this service. She also gave us lots of directions for that. And so through her, what she wanted to do was share and give away her art that she created and also collected throughout her life. We all took some of her art, but she had so much, she wanted to share that with people who came to her service. And so she asked that we display the items at her memorial and allow people to take something. There's big art as well as small art. She collected buttons throughout her life, so there's President Kennedy buttons, there's I Like Ike buttons, all the way to mini opening nights, which is the New Year's celebration that happens here. So if there's something you like, please grab it, and if there's a couple things you like, there's plenty there that Mom would love to share. Please join us after the ceremony in Daniel Hall for a reception to visit and also to enjoy the art of Anne Marie Grassmann. Thank you.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, faith has taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. Though pain, tribulation, and trial should come, let this simple prayer now console. Though I have regarded my helpless estate, I shall know it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. When life beareth down and no answers arise, and all is beyond my control, my heart still can rest in the peace I have found, and proclaim it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul.
At this time, we'd like to invite anyone who would like to share a word, share a memory, to come and speak from the lectern.
My name's Susan Biles, and I met Anne Marie here in about 1975. And she was my best friend, my auntie, my sister, my surrogate mother. And she finally, when I saw her in February, I was saying, well, you know, how did the project turn out? Because she was always taking on projects. She said, you turned out pretty damn good for a project. I wasn't quite sure. Yeah. You made it. It's like, okay. And we sat and we talked, and we'd talk about anything and everything. And always, I want to turn around and call her and say, guess what? Trump finally got in trouble. You know, or guess what? This or that is happening. Or I want to, you know, tell you what the kids did. Most of all, though, I think, you know, we teased each other that we were the women that it was the best. If we were going to get stuck on a desert island, you know, the shipwreck thing, that she and I would do fine together. And you guys know, she knows what she didn't know how to do. I pretty much knew how to do, and we knew how to figure it out. So that's my lasting memory of Anne Marie. I mean, there's 20 million trillion memories in my head. But I will always think of her as my wise woman. She would always come up with something that made me think harder about what I just said. And that's a rare gift in a person. And she never got mad at me for saying any of that kind of stuff and having to kind of, well, now, Susan, you might want to think about. She was the best. And I'll miss her horribly.
Anne Marie was, first of all, I'm Ruth Gordon, was one of the first people I became close to when we joined this church. To say that she was like a sister to me is kind of an understatement. We came real close one time to actually getting there when she actually dated my brother for a couple of years, but that was a long time ago. She was the person who always knew what to say, what to do, and to keep people like me calm when I was not being calm. My favorite thing to say to her was how much older she was than I was. She was born in December of 1943. I was born in February 1944. Not even the same decade. 6 weeks before I was born, she was born. And we played lots of jokes on each other about aging and the shapes of our bodies. And anyway, she was a true, lovable friend to the very end.
Hi, I'm Barbara Gallivan. In 1993, when my mother was 79, she was developing dementia, And then she got shingles, and she became totally unable to move. I remember Kathy had to help get her down the stairs, get her to the hospital. But Anne Marie just stepped right in when Mom was in the hospital and helped me figure out what we needed to do. And then after 3 weeks, she had to go to a nursing home, and Anne Marie was associated with that nursing home as an occupational therapist. And nobody could have been more helpful, and including in making decisions, because when it was time to leave the nursing home, we had to figure out whether she could go home or what to do. And the only person that was truly, truly helpful in making the decision was Anne Marie. And she was just, my brother and I were so appreciative of the help she gave us. And she did that for lots of other people.
Good morning. I'm Peggy Powell. I met Anne Marie at the church here because my daughter and Alicia are close in age. And, you know, we had a cordial, relationship for a long time. And one year she decided that she and I should put an auction item in that was an Indian rice toffle. I may be saying this wrong. And I had no idea what that was, but I thought it'd be fun to do a project with Anne Marie. So we split up these, I don't know how many recipes, but a lot of recipes. We shopped for the ingredients, and then we went to her house and cooked all this in a day and had all these people over for dinner. I would have never been able to pull that thing off without Anne Marie, but it was a joy, so much fun. I just always enjoyed her company. And then when I returned, I had worked at OU Medical Center in my youth, and then when I returned to work, she was there in the occupational therapy department. So we ran into each other in the halls, and we took care of the same patients. And she, as was just said, her problem-solving abilities, that was the perfect occupation for her, because she, of course, was very engaged with patients, but her problem-solving ability was spectacular. She could figure out all kinds of ways to attack a problem that weren't necessarily conventional. She taught her students to do the same. So she left a mark in a million ways that we've already discussed, but I just was grateful that I got to witness all that at work. We enjoyed counting the number of Unitarians that worked in our campus because we would, all kind of meet up at the same events. And so I just enjoyed her friendship so much. Never really felt the generational or age difference. Being a boomer, obviously I ruined her life, but she accepted me anyway. But I just have to say she made a big impact, and it was a joy to have as a friend. I'll miss her a lot. Thank you.
Well, I'm Nathaniel Batchelder, Batch, and Anne Marie was a friend and an ally and a colleague to Anne Marie and me and everyone who did our work. And she will be missed. She is missed by us and by the dozens of groups and organizations that she gave her spirit and efforts to. The world misses her, even if they didn't know her. Thanks.
Would you please join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation? Spirit of life, source of love, we have come together today in this place to express our gratitude for the gift that was the life of Anne Marie. We are so thankful to have been alive in the same place and at the same time as one so full of life and love. We pray that we may carry the purple flame of her commitment and enthusiasm, of her desire to drink life to the lees and share it with others, so that her memory is a blessing that goes on for a very long time, even after she is physically gone. Today, our hearts are with those who love Anne Marie the most, her family, her closest friends, many of those we've heard from today. And we especially want to hold in our hearts her children and their spouses, Jamie, Jessica, Alicia, Jim and Chuck, her siblings and their spouses, Sandy, Tim, Tom, Mike, Debbie, and Margaret, grandchildren Sean, Nathan, Sorsha, nephews James and Justin, and caretaker and friend Janetta. For these and so many others who are mourning the loss of their cherished one, we pray they will find peace and healing, and that her memory will be a balm and a joy to them. In this world that is so full of hatred, fear, and misunderstanding, may we recognize the grace that life has offered to each one of us and channel that grace and love back into the universe, into the hearts of others, through kindness, through compassion, through advocacy, through care, through love. And now, in the silence, may we think upon the things we've heard today. May we honor the memory of Anne Marie and celebrate the myriad ways her life has made a difference in our own lives. Amen. And now the time has come to extinguish our chalice. As one life may end, but life itself goes on, the flame may go out, but it burns in our hearts. As Jessica mentioned earlier, after today's service, all are invited to Daniel Hall, which is through these doors and to your right, for refreshments. And as Jessica also mentioned, it was Anne Marie's wish that her family and friends might each take a piece of art that she collected and was brought here today, anything that they like or that represents a cherished memory. I leave you with this blessing. The poet Joy Harjo writes in her poem, A Map to the Next World, "We were never perfect, yet the journey we make together is perfect on this earth, who was once a star and made the same mistakes as humans. We might make them again," she said. "Crucial to finding the way is this: there is no beginning or end. You must make your own map." May you go then to chart your own map of life with peace in your hearts, with gratitude for laughter and friends and happy memories and unexpected kindness, with hope before you and grace behind you, and with love, always with love. May it be so. Please rise in body or in spirit as the family departs.